Hey, awesomes. Welcome to our rhetorical situation video here. We're in the middle of week 4. And so the rhetorical situation is the um, kind of the main emphasis, if you will, not all of it, but the one of the major emphases that I want you to kind of get out of the backpacks versus briefcases reading for this week by Carol. And so we're going to look at kind of discuss some of those through this PowerPoint. Of course, I've made the PowerPoint, the Google Slides available to you on Moodle. So in the introduction, she talks about kind of rhetoric in general. So when we think about what sets up a rhetorical situation is that I think oftentimes we don't maybe realize that we're participating in rhetoric ourselves all the time, right? Recall she talks about in the very beginning there, these snap judgments and these kind of this analysis that we make based on a lot of times people's clothing, right? So we do this on appearance. We even often do this too when it's tough with think about text messages and stuff today. We don't have the visual cues, right? We don't have those facial expressions, gestures, right, that help us kind of interpret not just solely the words that are being said, but how they're being said, and then what gives those words those meanings. And so we make judgments a lot of times. We're analyzing the context, right? We'll talk about context in a minute. And we also have, of course, advertising, right, which is a kind of rhetorical persuasion. A lot of times, companies are putting their advertisement, their products or services in front of you to persuade you to A, buy them if it's a product, or B, use their services, right? These kinds of things. So rhetoric is always at work in those kinds of things. We think about rhetoric not just solely as always persuasive, but rhetoric is really kind of like studying and thinking about effective communication, how communication works, messaging. Is the message of a communication getting across? So we'll use the word messages or a rhetorical message a little differently. It's not just the same thing as the text message per se, but what is the message of, let's say, an advertisement, right? What does your clothing choices, right? What does the article? What's the article that you've chosen? What's its overall message, right? And so we think about those particular things in a context. And so these rhetorical situations that we have, as I said a second ago, articles, one example of a rhetorical message. And the thing that's interesting to really think about when you look at your article, or when you look at any article, even when you see an advertisement, when you see someone reporting on something or talking about something in particular, generally it's in response to something else, right? So so one of the obviously big things right now is we can read so many articles every day about COVID, right? We would not perhaps be seeing all these articles, right? And all these news stories and these reports and statistics and facts and other situations and things like that are taking place had it not been for this initial event, right? The event being COVID kind of coming into or being released onto society. So the messages in those articles, right, particularly, will be responding not just to COVID at all, but maybe perhaps about safety, right? Social distancing, how to keep it from spreading, to be vaccinated or not to be vaccinated, to mask or not to mask. Is it responding to a message, right? Responding to a situation, right? A context in which there is a conversation now taking place about that particular topic. And so Carol breaks context down into these three things she calls exigence, audience, and constraints. And so we're going to look at each one of those real quick. Exigence is it's the response, right? What caused this? What causes or what has caused this? The need for your particular article, right? How do we kind of assess what the article is responding to, and what problem is it hoping to address? So what is the very specific thing? So like if we're using COVID as our example, it wouldn't be just COVID at all. It might be responding very specifically to the discussion or the argument of to be vaccinated or not to be vaccinated, and it may be taking one particular side and addressing a very particular aspect of that overall topic. All right, so that kind of creates the exigence, right? And then we have, of course, audience is extremely important, and that is our intended or sometimes unintended recipients of the message. So we can look for cues a lot of times, or clues too, within how the author has written the article, that they have a very particular audience